Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on CFL Talk, joining me is David Morassutti. David, welcome to the program as usual. An interesting week, to say the least. We're looking like there will be a season. Just today, an announcement that Thompson has signed with the Argos again for this year, McLeod Bethel Thompson. A good signing, making the quarterback position, I think, that more solid. Hopefully McLeod, if and when he gets under center, he'll have a better team around him so that all those wonderful statistics that he created and has as a record of the last few seasons that he's played will have some impact, maybe more on the win column than it's had in the past.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he was one of those players that opted out last year when things were uncertain about the CFL. Pretty sure he did it before the CFL season was canceled. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of division amongst Argos fans about McLeod Bethel Thompson's play, because you have the side that said, "Oh, look how great look at the stats he put together. Look, he led the league in touchdowns." But then you got the other half of it is like, well, the Argos still finished near the bottom of the standings when he was under center. I think this is definitely a different, as you said, a different roster he's coming to. The weapons he has, a different coaching staff. I know it's sometimes going through so many coaching staffs isn't the greatest thing for a player, but this is, somebody who's very quarterback oriented. And Dinwiddie, he's excited to have McLeod, and I think if you're the Argos, this is a more sure backup plan or someone to really push Nick Arbuckle a little bit more. Antonio Pipkin, I was curious to see how he would do. He's probably going to be the third quarterback, the guy that I don't know if he's going to be the guy that comes in when you need to get that that short yardage, because he's done that before. But I think if you're the Argos, you're definitely a little more insured with what you got behind center than you were, the last few months.
I gotta say, as far as potential is concerned, right? Talking from the perspective of potential, Nick Arbuckle is potential. He hasn't really established himself as a day in, day out, week in, week out quarterback. Antonio Pipkin has about the same level, I think, of respect from those of us that watch the Canadian Football League that Nick Arbuckle has. Maybe even just a tiny bit more when you consider how his game poked through all the other quarterbacks in the league during a season, if you follow what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I think, pressure, especially for, when we talked to Marshall last week, he made it a point of saying, look, we've seen what Nick Arbuckle has done in limited stints with Calgary, but we haven't seen it for a full season. And, it's not a for sure thing. This isn't an established starter. In most eyes, if I what I mean by established starters, I mean like, the Trevor Harris's, the Bo Levi Mitchells, Mike Riley, like those are bona fide, legit starters. But you got to get, at the same time, I'm also of the belief that in order to get that experience, you have to work for it, right? You got to put yourself in a position to get there. So, I just think that we already know that Dinwiddie was putting his name behind Arbuckle. That's his guy. They got a working. I know it, when they brought him in, I thought it made, as we said, I thought it made more sense to do it now. It should have been done in the first place. We talked about the semantics behind trading for Arbuckle, because technically he wasn't a free agent. Ottawa jumped in and swooped them up. But I think this is the more logical fit, and I still have belief that McLeod can be a guy that can give you what you need if he's called upon, whether it's as a starter or whether it's as the guy that has to fill in. He's proven that he could be productive. It's just now, can the team, as we've said, can the team now insulate and provide some support for these quarterbacks because they haven't received it.
Well, they have to have a running game. They have to have plays downfield. You know, they've got to have that. The only problem with that is that Nick Arbuckle isn't that kind of quarterback, and actually neither is Bethel Thompson. But Thompson was showing that he was able to start to do that. He was starting to find guys downfield, which I'm a firm believer of. If you can't stretch the defense has an ability to shut you down and or do what defenses want to do, and that is bend but not break.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? You know, we saw there were a lot of close games that the Argos did miss out on.
Yes.
There were a lot of games where the Argos found themselves down 21-0 really early because a turnover, a special teams error, or the other team just got off to a quick start. You know, there were a lot.
We even saw a game they were behind 21-0 before the Argo quarterback touched the football.
Yeah, I think that was a game. I think that was against Winnipeg, actually, in Winnipeg.
Yes, you're right.
I'm just like waiting. I'm just like, they haven't even thrown a pass. They haven't even snapped the ball yet. Like that, it's those sort of things that. How do you put that on the quarterback? That's not on the quarterback.
Absolutely.
Right. And
then you get, I want to add to that. And then you get quarterback statistics that say, oh, well, that's all garbage stuff. Right. So McLeod hasn't really had a chance to show what he can do starting at, 0. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we you and I have had many conversations with McLeod. He is very different in the way he approaches. His mindset is certainly a lot different than a lot of other players I've talked with. He's very I don't really know how to put it. Like those of us that have had conversations with McLeod,
self-deprecating.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, he tells it as it is as well. You know, if you're a fan and you're wondering how a player is, McLeod Bethel-Thompson will tell you how it is. He doesn't like to sugarcoat things.
Doesn't mince words.
He's, I felt like, we got polar opposites when we had James Franklin and McLeod Bethel-Thompson.
Now that you mentioned Franklin, I'm going to detour you a little bit, just a tiny bit, because it's important also to mention that McLeod Bethel-Thompson once again isn't, and I'm this is my presumptive comment, the favorite quarterback of the staff, if you follow what I'm saying, because by virtue of what you said about Arbuckle and him fitting in with the coach, because they both came from Calgary, and it happened to him before when Franklin came, because the team, the coach, and the management brought this guy in, and they expected Franklin to take the reins. They just didn't have a cooperative coach that was willing to do the same thing at the same time. So McLeod Bethel-Thompson understands where he has to prove himself. But he's been doing that his whole football career. His whole background and all the teams he's played for, David, have spoken to the fact that he's had to prove himself over and over.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's weird because, Jim Pop was like, this is the guy I made that trade for. I see the potential in him as a start, and James Franklin as a starting quarterback. Mark Trestman, clearly, I mean, the times when Ricky Ray went down, we're like, oh, so does this mean James Franklin is going to come in? And it was crickets. It was like, no, we're going to have to evaluate, and it ended up being McLeod. And then there was the back and forth. And then when it came to when Corey Chamberlain was here, he's put his support behind James Franklin. And then push comes to shove, they gave him the opportunity, and then it was all right. We're gonna go with McLeod, and at that point, McLeod, the season was the season was already getting away from the Argos. It's not a situation you like to put the quarterback in. So I think this is a clean slate. If I would say this is a clean slate for McLeod in terms of, you know, he's already kind of been through this where like one guy is kind of anointed as the starter. But I think for him, you know, the I think he'll probably approach it a little differently. It'll be nice to see when we get to finally talk to him what his mindset is like and where he sees himself on the depth chart and where and whether or not Dinwiddie is anointing. I mean, things might. I don't think things have changed just based off this signing. But I think Dinwiddie won't. No, he's seeing the body of work that McLeod has with some of these players. I'm curious to see if that changes anything, but I personally don't think it will at this point.
I'm totally open to whatever is going to happen. I think it's important. It's very important that the players, the team, and all of us, after what we've been through, I think we should all take a look at the Canadian Football League for at least the beginning, for at least the beginning of when we get back there. I think all of us should be grateful for the Canadian Football League if and when it starts up again. And I repeat, not just the fans, the players, the owners, the officials, and anybody who's been looking forward to the Canadian Football League coming back for another season. There might be a little of, I'm just glad to be here. The same way you get on the field and the first time you get hit, it's going to be a sweet sensation more than a horrible sensation. I mean, in lieu of not getting hurt, of course. But
Yeah.
but you get what I'm saying. We all should be ready to be grateful for being here. And if you're McLeod Bethel Thompson, the opportunity to be a starting quarterback, I think, should be enough. And I think the same is true for Arbuckle. I think he should be grateful for the opportunity, to be the starting quarterback. And Dinwiddie, after 2 years and change of being the prospective head coach of the Toronto Argonauts, to be able to grab that whistle and do it with intent. I mean, and the ownership, the whole reason the owners are here is because they want to own a football team and they want to be part of this excitement that is pro sports. So we should all come into this grateful and respectful of the opportunity. And I believe that everybody will, especially with the Argos because of Pinball Clemens. I'm sure he'll find a way to spin it to be something that this is great for all of us.
Yeah, when the Argonauts took over, when MLSE took ownership of the Argonauts, like they were, Jim Pop was already here. They felt like things were kind of settled. They had, just won the Grey Cup, so you don't want to tinker with what's deemed a very good team or just a good situation. And then you kind of started seeing the things change a little bit. Bill Manning comes in. He's now overseeing the team, as the president, and Pop is kind of focused on just the roster. And then, Pop is let go. John Murphy's brought in. He's kind of working behind the scenes. Then they're courting Pinball for God knows how long, and then he eventually steps in. And when he stepped in, they weren't looking to make sweeping changes right away. They wanted to. They were going to take the time afforded to them. Say, okay, let's evaluate. Let's see what we have to work with. We're not just going to get rid of everything. Let's see if we can work with something. Because once you tear something down, it's a lot harder to build it back up. So let's not demolish something that might not be broken, right? They made quite a few changes. This is not, especially if you look at the defensive side of the ball, the offensive line, even the receiving core. Like, this is a totally different team. And if you're an Argos fan, yes, you want to see this team take strides forward, but also understand that when you make as many changes as this team has gone through, it's going to take time. You got a new quarterback, new presumed starting quarterback. You've got a lot of different a lot of coaches coming in. I think really there's only a couple coaches that were retained from the initial staff. Like this is a totally remodeled team. But anytime you make sweeping changes, it takes time for it to settle. They've been off this whole time, but how much of that time has been spent worrying about what's happening on the field rather than trying to figure out your situation off the field?
Yeah, and on the subject of quarterbacks, another quarterback, of course, is Kelly Bryant, who, by the way, was the backup to Deshaun Watson, and then he lost his starting job to Trevor Lawrence. So you could say this guy, even if he's only the third best quarterback in that group, he could be a very good quarterback. And Clemson has a reputation for producing great quarterbacks in the Canadian Football League. Just to close out the subject matter, which is quarterbacking for the Toronto Argonauts.
Yeah, they're not going to be short on quarterback options. Antonio Pipkin gets moved down the depth chart. Kelly Bryant, there was a lot of intrigue with that signing, even south of the border. A lot of people thought that, what was going he transferred from Clemson because he's got to start. He's got to showcase himself if he wants to continue in football. And I'm very curious to see how long it takes for him to get used to the Canadian game. Because look, it's not a bing bang. You come up here and you're ready for it. There's a lot of adjustments you have to make as a quarterback to get to the CFL level. McLeod, we don't know how long his contract is. This could be.
I'm going to bet it's a 1-year contract.
I'm going to bet as well. You're not going to give somebody that might not be your starter more than 2 years. Even starting quarterbacks sometimes don't get more than 2 years.
They didn't say how long a contract. And
no.
We know,
which is my biggest gripe.
I get that. That should all be, well, if they want to get into gambling, that's going to have to, all that stuff's going to have to come out. That's the one thing, before we get to that, because I know you really are chomping at the bit to talk about gambling. And
I don't have a gambling problem. Let's just put it there first.
I have a gambling solution. I have no gambling.
We don't call it losing. We call it non-winning, by the way.
Yeah. We call it a reason to cover our bet, I guess. I am. Let's get to that topic. But to close out the Argonaut thing, McLeod Bethel Thompson is with the Argos. The Argos and the Canadian Football League, with a lot of the signings that we're seeing, are signaling a sincerity in starting the season, he says, with, a little, I'm pretty sure. Do I sound certain? No. Do I want to be certain? Yes. Do I have reason to believe? These kind of signings, to me, David, to close out this topic, tell me that the season is seriously being contemplated. And the only reason I'm using that term is because these are COVID times. There are no guarantees, and there is no path, because we're doing this all the way through it, right? Up and down, up and down. But this shows that there is a seriousness to this season being a possibility.
Yeah, I know there's I personally, with the last few, even the last month, because we were kind of on the fence of whether or not we were even going to get a season. But if I'm going to go with what I've seen the last month, I definitely think there's going to be a season. It's the only pause for concern that I have is you have the BC Premier saying, if we can push this
happen, yeah.
No, if we can push the season a little bit further into August, that would make it happen. No, that's not. When you already have Alberta giving the green light, guess what, BC? I mean, I guarantee Manitoba and Saskatchewan aren't going to be too far behind. BC's going to start on the road. And same issues happening in Ontario right now. I guarantee you're going to see those teams start on the road as well. I think the CFL is prepared for some uncooperation while others are going to be a little more cooperative.
But something happened in the last 24 hours, David, that raises everyone's eyebrow, right? Mm-hmm. Something interesting has happened. the Premier has seen fit to allow 500 people to watch the Leaf game tonight against Montreal.
550 fully vaccinated. Well, because they're only healthcare workers that are fully vaccinated right now. That's that is a step forward. And if you're in Quebec right now, 2,500 were allowed to go and watch the Canadians and Leafs game inside.
Indoors. Remember, this is the key point. Both these
Yeah,
teams are being allowed to bring people indoors. Now, remember,
exactly.
the Canadian Football League, except for BC, is played outdoors. Now, I have some ideas that I'm going to run by you that I'd like to run by you, because the reality, I want to reassure people that it's possible that we can go to the games. But let's. Are we finished with that part of the topic? Or do you have more you
All I'm
want
going to say, just add to that, is yeah, I think we are likely going to see fans at CFL games when the season starts. We were debating whether they were going to start without fans. I'm leaning towards, even if it's just some fans, you're going to see butts in the seats to start the CFL season.
Can you imagine that, since we're on this topic, and I'm just wondering, because in the conversations that we had, my opinion has always been that starting a little later, and even start it in the middle of August with training camp, and then start the season on the
Yeah.
long weekend. And my sales pitch to you at that time was that, for all intents and purposes, in reality, for the sake of symbiosis, the Canadian Football League, the season starts in our minds on Labor Day,
Yeah.
contractually for the players and for fans. As far as the big game of the season, it's the first big game of the season, because everybody loves the Labor Day thing that the Canadian Football League does. I always
Yeah.
thought that was a possibility. So what BC is saying is basically they're falling into that category.
Yeah, I don't blame them, because like not every province is dealing with is vaccinating at the same rate.
And it
Not
doesn't
every
stay the same.
Yeah.
That's, the
And let's not forget, BC's stadium is not outdoors.
right.
It is an indoor stadium.
Correct.
That does I mean, if I've learned anything about this virus, the transmission rates indoors is a lot more different than it is outdoors. So I think that's where the hesitancy is coming from, and I don't blame them in that regard. But we've also seen the precedent has been set by by Quebec, and now by Ontario. Hey, we've allowed some spectators. It's going to be
Doors
harder. Yeah, it's just like
doors open a crack.
it's just like when you're a parent and you let one kid stay out for an extra hour, and the other one's like, oh, but you let him stay out for the extra hour. You have to show fairness.
Yeah, the rules change
Yes.
just because time changes everybody's mind. And as time passes, there's two things that the pandemic has taught me. I don't know that I've had it. I don't know that I haven't had it. But one thing living in the world of the pandemic is that we have two things that we always have to consider. There's the reality of what's going on now, and then there is the hope of what we can do tomorrow. And the reality of today impacts our hope of tomorrow. So, in other words, the reality of the fact that we have people going to games means that the reality tomorrow is that it probably will happen again. Because once in our mind, I think we're just tired of being at home. I know you are. I know I am. I know everybody is, right? Well,
Yeah.
once you open that door a crack, it's like, it's like Boxing Day sale, baby. The door's open. Forget about it. The crowd is loose. Now what do you do? So if they're opening the door a crack, this is my opinion. Is it because of the pressure of Quebec? Or is Quebec doing it because they feel really there's an opportunity here to get back to normal? And then once Quebec says, look, this is why we think it's normal, how about you? And now Quebec has released information suggesting that if you had COVID-19 at any time and then had the first jab, you are fully vaccinated. That is what their healthcare experts are saying in Quebec. I'm wondering how Ontario's experts are going to feel. The reason I'm saying this is because I've always been under the impression in my mind that once vaccinated, how do you keep people out of living their normal lives? And now if you take away the need of the second one, that accelerates the time frame where you can bring people in. That's why I think it's important. And those are the things that we're learning, the two things, the reality and the wish. Well, then all of a sudden reality becomes the wish. That's pretty good. And I think hopefully that's where we are, where the reality is what we've been hoping for.
Yeah, all I'm gonna say to that is, I mean, technically that would make me fully vaccinated, considering
Right.
I tested positive and I had my first shot. I had my first shot, then 2 days later I tested positive for COVID.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
it. Just happens. That
have you
happens.
had a
Just weird
blood
timing.
test since?
Have I? So I'm not allowed to test again because I will show up as positive.
No, not for that reason. For the
But I've had
antibody.
blood. I had blood work done.
Yeah, and did they say that you had antibodies?
Oh, I see. Now that's the thing. I hadn't had that blood work done,
That's what
and
I'm talking about.
yeah.
Because
So
because the other thing I want to say for what Quebec is saying, just this last thing,
yeah,
is that they're saying that if you have had the virus and you've had the first jab, the second jab is more dangerous. I don't want to
yeah,
alarm people, but that's something they're saying.
yeah. I haven't gotten a blood test because it's a special test you have to get done to check for those antibodies. I didn't get,
Oh, okay.
so I don't know how. I guess I got to talk to my doctor about
I
that.
have one tomorrow with my doctor back home where
Yeah,
I used to live. I'm asking that question because what Quebec says concerns me. You know,
yeah,
we all want to be aware of the best, the best practice, right?
yeah. Yeah, so I would just say this: if you're anyone is look at what's going on in the states right now. 135,000 people went to watch the Indy 500
Mm-hmm.
for IndyCar. 16,000 were at the Bruins game in Boston, and they were one of the few states that were very locked down.
Yep.
They were very cautious because everyone says, "Oh, Florida, you can't really compare that." Well, Boston had 16,000. New York is allowing just roughly about 8,000, and New York's actually already committed to having full stadium. I'm sorry, New Jersey has committed to full stadiums for Jets and Giants games. So, if people want to understand the incentives of getting fully vaccinated, look in the fact that government officials will have trusted the science behind what happens when you're fully vaccinated and what it means for you to live a normal life. Now, it does. I don't know what that's going to mean for traveling and all those things. When it comes to congregating, I'm more convinced that we're getting to. I mean, with second doses are also being pushed up in Ontario. I'm more, they do realize you can't live this way forever. It's not
It's
it's
my
not
hope.
sustainable. It's not sustainable, not just economically, but mentally.
Emotionally, it's a challenge.
Oh my! You know what? No, there's people who are, they see that 550 fans are being allowed at the Leafs game, and they're like, well, people can go to a Leafs game, but I can't go visit my friends
Or go to church,
or go to
or
church
visit. Yep. Or
or
visit other
visit
family that
visit
doesn't
other
live in.
family. Can't hug my family. My family members I
Father's
haven't
Day
seen
is
them.
coming up.
Yeah, I get that. I totally
Easter.
get that. But there's a difference between having one shot or no shot versus being fully vaccinated. It's just so tough to compare the situations because the science favors the fully vaccinated side.
Let's go to the Canadian Football League, and I'll use it
Yes.
in the Canadian Football League framework. Here's the thing: you have people go to the game. Remember, folks, at the Montreal game the other night, you weren't able to buy beer or food. Closed. All you were able to do is to bring whatever you brought with you, and you sat in your seat. You didn't travel in the arena other than to use the bathroom. That's all you were allowed to do. You couldn't buy anything. I assume the same is going to be pretty much true tonight at the Leaf game.
Oh yeah.
The thing is, if and when they allow fans to come in, I can see and I could understand if when you leave your seat you have to be masked, if eventually they open up being able to get beer and stuff like that, right? Where they won't have people come down to serve it to you. You'll have to
Mhm.
go and get it, but you'll have to be masked, regardless of whether you've been vaccinated or not. And the reason I say this is we're at the point now where the first wave of people who are interested in the vaccine and want to be protected and believe in the science and will act on the science and have done their best to get the jab, right? That call that the first wave. The second wave are the people who don't want to get vaccinated or doubtful about getting vaccinated or don't feel like they need to be vaccinated or they felt they had the coronavirus so they don't need to have the vaccine. Those are the people that are at threat. Because if you had the vaccine, like yourself, and sorry, the COVID, you supposedly have antibodies. If you had the vaccine, you also have the protection of it won't put you in the hospital in a terrible way. You still will get sick. You still will be asymptomatic, which means you will carry the virus, which is why you'll have to wear a mask and you should wear a mask when you go up if you go get the food. That's why I'm saying you would need it. So essentially, we're getting to the point where the people who don't want to protect themselves are the only ones at threat. So now we've already gone through this thing that we talked about that we're
Mhm.
sick and tired of being inside. Well, we shouldn't have to, and this is, I'm going to say this, it sounds horrible, but I want to be the first to say this. If you don't want to protect yourself, it's on you. You can't drive like a lunatic on the road and expect me to stop driving because you want to drive like a lunatic on the road. I'm going to stop you from having those kinds of rights to be on the road. Too bad for you. And that's all I can say. And that's going to be the next phase we're going to get into, David. It's my hope that we'll be able to go to the games first. And then it's my hope that you can go and get a drink, get fries, get a burger, get one of those silly, if you're in Winnipeg, one of those stupid hamburgers that are 12 feet tall. Go ahead and do that. Enjoy yourself. Go to town, and then we'll look on the TV and watch how fast you can go through it, starting at the first quarter and to the end of the game. What I'm saying is, we got to live, and we can't wait on the people who disagree with trying to be safe. If they feel they want to take a risk, this is a free country. Let them take the risk. But for companies, and this is why I say about the masks and other things, we're not sure who's responsible if someone gets sick. What happens when somebody dies and they say, well, the reason I died is because I went there and there is responsible for my death. That's the thing that we're trying to avoid on one hand, but more importantly, we're trying to avoid clogging our hospitals and our emergency rooms. So that's going to be the test in Boston that you talked about. That'll be the test. What happens in 2-3 weeks in Massachusetts? Does their system get strained by people getting COVID? If not, you know what that means, David. If not,
Yeah. Oh
we're
yeah.
on our way.
Once you're like crossed the bridge, the one person who's crossed the shaky bridge, if it's fine, no one gets hurt. Hey everyone, come on over. Let's go. We're good. We're safe. That's like it's you there's going to be hesitancy. There's going to be some that are not going to want to go right away. There's also going to be people that are going to be sprinting once
Absolutely.
you know
And the people who want to sprint have a right to sprint as
they
long as
do.
they're keeping other people safe. Like I said,
Exactly.
just because you have the vaccine doesn't mean you don't get the virus.
Oh yeah. No, I know for sure. And I know I've heard of fully vaccinated people getting the virus because these variants are a totally different animal than the initial virus. So
So you got to act like it's still pass it on, and
you have to you
that's
have
the
to you do. Once the case numbers have reached a manageable, controllable level, once we started seeing the case numbers going down, that's where the hope is that okay, we're heading in the right direction. I
herd
think
immunity.
we're getting there. We're slowly getting there. And if you're a CFL fan, delaying the season might have was the best option, and likely will give more of a reason for there to be a season this year.
Yeah, unfortunately, the reality is that zero deaths in life is an unattainable goal when we talk about everything. If we're going to stop living because of cancer, if We're going to stop living because of car accidents. We're going to stop. There was a post on Facebook where
Oh no.
somebody posted, I got to stop feeding my children food because a person died choking to death on food. So that means I shouldn't be feeding them. In essence, an analogy towards what we're talking about, right? So at the end of the day, we want to live, we got to live, and you know what? We got to do it as safely as possible. Put on your seatbelt, look both ways before you cross the street. All those silly things. None of them guarantee that you're going to be safe. None of them. So, at some point, we have to do what's called risk management, right? We have to respect and understand, is the risk manageable? And that's why I always say, we'll know how free we are by how occupied emergency is in our local hospitals. That is the canary, in the mine. That's it. That's what we go by. We go by, can our healthcare system handle our interaction? If it can't, we can't interact. So folks, the more you do to ensure that you don't pass it along, and we know David's a testament to it. You've survived it. Everybody doesn't die from the virus, but some people do. And we have to take note of who's at risk and take care of them. If we're causing a problem, take care of us not causing the problem. Even if we're vaccinated, have a mask on, because you may be asymptomatic. So all these things are going to be hyperactive for a little while, right? All these ideas, we're going to see them all ferment, right? So all I can say is, for myself, I'll do the best to protect myself and others. And there's always going to be the people, David, I'm sorry, but this is real. There are going to be the people who don't care. They only worry about themselves, or don't even care about themselves. Then you got the next level. So,
And we have fans that have, I don't know if you've been following everything going on in the NBA. We have
oh my
fans that
goodness.
feel like, I might have spent even a lot more on the ticket. I get to just, it's free game.
Well, you want to get into basketball and Kyrie Irving, we can get into basketball and
Well,
Kyrie Irving,
what
but
Kyrie Irving did wasn't exactly. It
exactly.
was he stirred the pot pretty good,
What
but
he did was just as bad as what the fan did.
yeah, it's
Because
just, unfortunately, if you're a fan, when you buy a ticket,
you don't get to do that.
You've accepted the terms that come along with the ticket. Let somebody else handle what a player does on the court, because you will now, guess what? That fan is
Oh, he's
banned for life.
lifetime ban.
Lifetime ban. I hope it was worth it for them that they did it. I understand there's emotion involved, but guess what? Now you understand what players go through as well. When emotion changes, affects your judgment.
And I know you're saying that sarcastically. You don't really hope that he benefited from doing it. That was a
No.
sarcastic statement on your part. I want to make
Yes.
sure
Yeah.
people
No.
understand
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Sarcasm can be very,
That was
very
sarcasm.
tough.
That David's not like that. He doesn't promote violence. Trust me.
No, I do not. No.
So I don't want anybody to misunderstand that statement. It was a sarcastic statement pointed at a fan. Now, um, in case you don't know what happened, and this isn't about football, but this is about fans, and I think this is an important thing to clarify because we started. Kyrie Irving at the end of the game walked over to the Boston logo, the Celtics logo, and he stomped on it. And in a clear sign of disrespect. Now, I think he should be fined for something like that, because to me, that is the definition of unsportsmanlike conduct. To me, that's the definition of it. That is disrespect. And if the league doesn't fine him or doesn't make him aware that what he did was wrong, then fans like that fan that threw the bottle will grow exponentially. Because essentially, I'm not saying what the fan did was right, but I am saying that it was instigated. Just like we talk about, sometimes the police are involved and a person does something. They don't call, well, there's a term called justified homicide. This isn't about homicide, but what I'm saying is, even something that horrible, people justify. So something like doing what he did is unjustifiable at its root, right? We don't agree with it. But tempting that kind of behavior in human beings who are very passionate and angry and upset, and in the mood like they are at sporting events, we can't allow those kinds of triggers. That's why we don't allow this gesture on the
Nope.
playing field, right?
On
Isn't that
football,
why we don't
especially
allow?
football.
There you go. So that's why that gesture is not accepted. And basically that's what this is about. What Kyrie Irving did was he crossed the line, and then to sit him and listen to him at a press conference and start talking about a zoo being treated like it's a zoo. Well, I'm just surprised, and I don't know if any reporter called him out on it, which they should have. They should have said, so then why did you stomp? How would you define that behavior? That would
Yeah,
be my question.
that's childish, in my opinion.
Well, it's also rude and it's
Oh,
also
it's
unsportsmanlike.
disrespectful. It's
Absolutely.
disrespectful. Teams have, and I'm sure football teams do something similar. They have fines if you have a logo in the dressing room and you step on the logo. Or
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, sometimes you don't know. I don't agree with putting the logo on the ground in the first place. I don't think it should be in a place where you walk. I know. I mean, on a basketball court, a hockey rink, it's different. I also, there's policies that some teams have about how you hang your jersey after. You don't just throw it or toss
Absolutely.
it on the ground.
They have rules
There's
for how you wear your socks.
yeah, there's a respect factor that right there.
It's the image they're trying to project. And what Kyrie Irving is not the image they want to project in any way. So to take this to the Canadian Football League, which is where you started with this, there's going to have to be a serious,
Yeah.
again, this is why, actually, that's the reason why I said what I said in a subtle way, why I said what at the beginning. Remember I said we all have to appreciate the privilege of being able to come back
Exactly.
to,
Yeah.
and we have to be respectful, and we have to show that respect, why
Yeah.
the players need to be the best player they can be. And I brought the fans into it and the ownership. We
Yeah.
all have to respect what's going on and be grateful. I know it's hard. I know it's
Oh.
hard to be grateful. I know in these times being, showing gratitude is difficult. And I'm not excusing the guy in the stands that threw the bottle, because there's no excuse.
No.
Absolutely none. But gratitude is something that we should really promote when we go back to the Canadian Football League. And let's hope. And I think Canadian fans are pretty good. Canadian Football League fans are very get up oriented. They love to be festive. They love to do that stuff. We love Argos suck. We hear that all the time. That kind of stuff. I welcome it back. I hope it comes back. In fact, don't tell anybody, David, but I kind of miss it.
I mean, I miss too, and I think CFL fans will take. I mean, from my experience, I mean, maybe Argos fans are more tame than a lot of. I mean, they are generally more tame than other fan bases from what I hear about stories in Hamilton and such. But I think they also understand there's you know, people haven't been able to enjoy the game in person in a long time. Let everyone get their opportunity to enjoy it the right way.
Yeah, and it just and I hope and I believe that we will be appreciative when it comes, and if the opportunity arises, and Canadians being Canadians, you know, um, we're a pretty down the middle of the road behavior kind of people, right? I mean, we're changing too. Let's be real. We're changing too, but I guess the way I'll frame this is to say that even the cleanest game played in any sport still needs a referee. So when we go to the games, if there's going to be somebody who's too drunk, or if a fight breaks out, it doesn't mean the whole thing's a disaster. What it
Mhm.
means is we're dealing with a herd of human beings, of which sometimes you need to call in the referees, the social referees, as in
Yeah.
security, police, and ambulance, fire and ambulance, and all those people. That's what they're there for. They're there to cover us when some of us go astray, whether it be on the road, or whether it be in a group, or whether it be at any event. We've got to accept that. So be aware that you don't have all the rights in the world to do whatever you want. Being that kind of person that endangers people. Remember, that bottle was thrown at Kyrie Irving in the middle of
Full
a
of
crowd,
water.
in the middle of, there were people around that
Yes.
could have been injured. So this moron that did that, the unintended consequence could have been brutal. could have been
Yes.
bad, right? So just
That's
because you're
why. That's why
unhappy
it's
with
not
it,
allowed.
absolutely, and that's why they got to be gone forever, and that's a fair thing to do.
Yeah.
I don't think any. I hope there won't be any. I think the biggest problem we're going to have as Canadian football fans is somebody running on the field a little, a
Somebody running on
little,
the field and trying to hug the field.
a little undressed, or just one
Oh no!
so excited about being at the game, they're going to run on the field and hug the nearest player they want to hug. I
Hug,
can
go and
see
hug,
that happening.
go run and hug the goalpost.
Absolutely, but try to do that before the game when nobody's looking.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we'll do. We'll walk on the field and we'll go hug the goalposts. That'd be a nice picture. Yeah, we got to get that picture of us hugging the
Oh,
goalpost.
yeah.
We'll have to ask the Argos permission to go on the field to do
Yeah.
that.
Exactly.
But
We have to
I
get
think that would
permission.
make a great tweet. I think it would. Maybe somebody will steal our idea. Yeah, we're down to the last few minutes. We didn't talk about gambling, so we only got a few
Oh
minutes.
no!
Remember, we were going to talk about gambling.
Maybe we'll preview a bigger gambling conversation.
Well, on the short term, the big thing is one game gambling. That's what the CFL needs.
Yeah. So yeah, this was something when we talk about what the CFL needs to drive revenue, and what Canadians. There's a reason why American sports are very profitable. The NCAA, college basketball, they're very profitable because guess what? People watch those games because they have a monetary investment in that game.
Right.
March Madness. Do you understand? I don't think people understand why March Madness is such a big thing. It's such a big thing because a lot of people put money on it.
It's the original fantasy pool.
Yes,
right?
I know you're such a big fan of them.
They invented bracket. Like
the bracket challenge.
That's all that. There was the brackets didn't really matter, and now when you see the playoffs, they talk about the NHL bracket, they talk about the NBA bracket, they talk about the NFL bracket. That all came from basketball, college basketball, and the Sweet 16.
Like I think CFL fans. I mean, look, in Canada, we've had the different versions of gambling where you can put down a pro line ticket. I hate pro line tickets because you could have X amount of games go your way, but then that one game doesn't fall your way, and you're just like, well, that's $5 or $20 down.
Advantage house.
Now, when it comes to single gambling, I can just say, let me put $20 down on Winnipeg beating Saskatchewan in the Banjo Bowl,
right?
Something like that. We don't have that. We don't have, hey, I think X quarterback is going to throw 2 interceptions. Like there's so many things that you can open up to. Look, even if you're the CFL, and a lot of people said this is going to help the CFL. You know what's going to help with it is that now media outlets are going to look at gambling content because people are going to need I don't know how many people understand how much research goes involved in gambling. Some people, like to throw in money based on odds, but a lot of people try to make money.
Or their team.
Yeah, exactly. Their team. But a lot of people like to do their research into trends, into what we're starting to see it now. A lot of
that's called legal card counting.
Yeah, exactly. Legal.
Legal card counting.
Never thought I'd hear those 2 words together in the same sentence.
Neither did I, but I thought I'd use it to describe the situation. I don't know much about gambling. I know a little bit. Then the little bit I know a lot about it.
I have friends who are big gamblers. Well, big in the fact, I mean, they're not, the term is degenerates in that they will throw their life savings. They're not that level, but they will throw some decent coin on it. And I've started to understand it a lot more in terms of what the odds and parlays and all those things. I'm starting to understand all those things because guess what? When it comes time, someone's got to write about this for the CFL. Hello, I'll do it, and you're gonna see. I maybe one day we'll get Justin Dunk on and to understand how his site could change if they add they've done gambling on their site. They've done on their podcast. They've done a podcast just on odds and stuff. you're going to see it's really going to pick up. The Score is the big that's the one site. I mean, Sportsnet's starting to do it a little bit, but the Score is miles ahead of a lot of places because they've already
And
invested.
every show, if they don't dedicate a part of their show to that,
Yeah,
they dedicate parts during the week or
exactly.
episodes or whatever. It's one of the main topics. Fantasy pools and gambling is one of the main topics. And then you go on Facebook, you go on Twitter. Facebook has groups about that. And then, of course, the gambling sites. Yeah, no, I
Gambling
hear you.
sites, gambling
I
shows.
hear you.
Guess what? Hey, maybe TSN will finally cover the CFL with a gambling show.
Well, why
Things
not?
like that
Like,
are
why
very
not?
important.
Why
It's
not?
you know what? I never understood why Canada was so far behind in all this because guess what? It's people's money. They work hard for it. Let them do what they want with it.
Well, it has to do, David, it has to do with licensing. And when in the
Yes.
United States they licensed gambling to a different level, right? They raised the
Yeah.
level of gambling in the United States. Here in Canada,
And they've started
you know,
opening it up more now.
yeah, because the lotteries are everywhere now, right?
Yes.
But they weren't everywhere to begin with. Casinos are
Yeah.
everywhere now. They weren't everywhere before. There were a
Frank,
few,
Frank,
right?
what I'm gonna say, you know what I'm looking forward to? They have it in I think it's in Atlantic City and some of them in New Jersey as well. It's a bar. It's a gambling bar.
Mm-hmm.
All these TV screens with all these sports.
Dude, I was in Vegas.
You
They had
run
a
you
giant,
yeah.
oh my
Yeah,
lord.
I haven't been to Vegas, so this
Oh
is
my
this is
gosh. I went there and at the time my ex-wife said, "Where are you going?" I want to go to the betting sports bar. Just what do you want to go to the sports bar for? Come on, just come with me. And well, you should have seen her eyes too. You
yeah,
walk into the place and it's like 2-3 stories high and it's all giant screens and all the ticker tape, all the
yeah.
different gambles,
Take
get all of it that's going on and how much of it's going on. Oh, National Hockey League, NBA, NFL, my
the
eyes are
NHL
going,
is
oh my
opening it
God.
up more so too. They're unloading new data. It's all about getting the data, investing in the data for people. I think that's where the XFL comes in. We're
And
going
the
to talk about them.
news and their news. This is the thing about when we started this program to head back to the Canadian Football League. There's a lot of stuff. That the CFL has to change
Yes.
because there has to be an openness. And you complained about not knowing about contract. All that stuff's going to have to become more available because remember those homework people David was talking about? That's what they're looking at. They're looking at all
Yeah.
those stats. They're looking at health reports where there has to be disclosure of injuries, the
What
extent
players
of the
playing for a
injury.
contract?
Absolutely. All
All
that
those
stuff
things.
impacts on gambling.
It does, and that's the CFL's got to realize you got to be a lot more open than you were before because you're inviting. You've seen lawsuits. I mean, people were trying to sue Manny Pacquiao for not disclosing an injury before a boxing match. That's the CFL. I mean, I'm glad they're getting in. They see the potential in it. We'll see how far it can go because I think it's really going to open. It's going to add more revenue and it's going to open up more eyes to the league, which has been the thing that they've been missing.
Yeah, and that's what they need to do. Well, David, we were going to talk about gambling. We ended up talking about a lot of other stuff, but we can always do it again next week.
I'll enjoy that.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Frank.
For David Morassutti, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, seen live Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out Spanglish World. Spanglish World. Watch it, read it, hear it, download it, and live it. Thank you for watching. Until next week, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. So I guess you found out we had a new link. You there, David?
Yeah, are we still live though?